What's going on, everyone? I am Double D, and welcome to the Double D Podcast once again. Always your host, Daniel DeForest, and here we are to the post-race news. So for the third time in Cup Series history, NASCAR would be racing in the Chicago streets, and Shane Van Gisbergen would start on pole with Michael McDowell, who's an experienced road course racer, starting in second. The race would go along, and Michael McDowell would take the lead, surprisingly, from SVG, and would lead the first few laps, until Carson Hocevar, his teammate, would cause a pile-up. The pile-up would involve Brad Keselowski, Todd Gilliland, and other drivers. And Keselowski, once again having bad luck, would not finish the race. So, then there wasn't really much that happened during stage one. Pretty much Michael McDowell would lead SVG all the way. And there'd be some strategy go on. You'd had other drivers that would pit at different times. SVG would pit before 2 laps to go, so that way he would take the lead on the restart, because he's not racing for stage points. He's trying to race for wins, because that's what he needs to build his playoff points, because he struggles more at these oval tracks than what he does at the road courses. So that allowed Michael McDowell to stay out and get some stage points and get a playoff point by winning the first stage. He's also in a close bubble battle, so that makes a lot of sense for McDowell to go with that strategy. Now, I do remember that Chris Buescher in the 17 had mechanical issues, and Christopher Bell, trying to pit early before the stage end, also got a speeding penalty entering on pit road, so he had to start in the back, and you know how Chicago street course is. It's hard to pass. And then you had stage 2 happen, and you would have Michael McDowell stay in the lead, and you would have other drivers go with different strategies. There was some drivers going on 1 stop and going on 2 stops. Kind of funny how this race kind of was going like an F1 race with how minimum these drivers were trying to pit. But Michael McDowell was in the lead, and Bubba Wallace spun, didn't bring out a caution, but that set him back into the field. And then, in the middle of stage 2, Josh Berry would crash into the wall, and that would bring out a caution. And with the timely caution, Tyler Reddick ended up being on pit road at the right time. As the pit cycle would go on, that would eventually let Tyler Reddick get the lead. But then the caution came out, and SVG, who pitted before the stage end earlier, would stay out, and McDowell would stay out, trying to stay out on his strategy, until Michael McDowell had a big problem. His throttle would not work, and it would only work at 75%, and he had to pit, and that would be the end of his race. Which, with how good that Spire has been doing the past couple of weeks, that's tough on them. Because Hocevar even qualified in the top 3 along with Michael McDowell, and he crashed out early, and then he got McDowell having a DNF, and that's not going to help him with trying to get into the playoffs. He's going to be more in a must-win situation. So there wouldn't really be any cautions until the end of stage 2, where Ryan Blaney would stay out and win stage 2, while others like SVG, AJ Allmendinger, and other drivers trying to be on different strategies would pit to try to win the race. But Blaney, knowing that he's kind of mediocre at road courses, would decide to take the playoff points. And remember when I mentioned that Tyler Reddick got that timely caution? Well, that went into his benefit, as he would restart second right next to Chase Briscoe, his teammate. Well, his Toyota teammate. They're not actually teammates, but his Toyota teammate, and Chase Briscoe, driving for Joe Gibbs Racing, would restart in first. But it wouldn't take long, as SVG would run them down on fresher tires. But then with 16 laps to go, a caution would come out, and it would be for NASCAR trying to assist a fan. It works different because at street courses, it's a little more difficult to get to attend to the fans, so they had to have a caution where the safety vehicle could assist the fan. And then the race would have its final restart with 13 laps to go, as you would see battles for the in-season tournament everywhere, like Chase Elliott and John Nemechek, Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace, and others. But there was some beating and banging, as there was some pretty intense battles throughout the field, as Ross Chastain and Joey Logano would get into each other, as it looked like Ricky Stenhouse kind of slid into the corner, hit Joey Logano, and spun out Ross Chastain. Chastain, in his opinion, thought it was Logano, and he took out Logano in the next corner, and also took out Ricky Stenhouse. Knowing how aggressive Ross Chastain is, he got his mission accomplished. As I mentioned earlier about the in-season tournament, Bubba Wallace and Alex Bowman were trying to battle to advance into the next round for the tournament to win $1 million. And it would get ugly, as each corner seemed like they were banging off of each other. Bubba Wallace trying his hardest to get in front of Alex Bowman, and Alex Bowman trying his hardest to get in front of Bubba Wallace. They would make contact, Alex Bowman would hit the wall, and Bubba Wallace would try to pass Alex Bowman. But of course, you know how it is. Rubbin's racing, and Alex Bowman gave the bumper to Bubba Wallace, and Bubba Wallace would spin around and would not have a good finish. But for that entire restart, SVG, the leader, Shane Van Gisbergen, would be in control of the race, as he would go on to win, but he would not win without controversy, as a caution would come out for Cody Ware, who crashed 100 miles an hour into the barriers, losing his brakes right before the leaders crossed the white flag. But instead, NASCAR waited a few corners, and even after they crossed the line, not to throw the caution, then they finally threw the caution, which angered a lot of fans, including me. I mean, usually when a driver's in that type of position, you got to attend to them as quick as you can. And NASCAR was neglecting to do that, and it was instead wanting to wrap up the race. And now we take a look at the top 10. As you can see, Shane Van Gisbergen won the race. That's his second win this season. Now imagine if he wins at Sonoma. He would tie for the most amount of wins this season, which is pretty insane because he's pretty much only good at road courses this year. Then you got Ty Gibbs, second place for him, solid run, but he's trying to get that win, and he just came up close once again. Tyler Reddick, who benefited from hitting early, got third. And then you look down the list, Austin Hill, who's racing part-time, got a top 10 finish, which is pretty impressive by him. And you see all the way down there, Ross Chastain finished 10th. And that's pretty much your top 10 there. And now we go to the point standings. As you can see, Chase Elliott, although he finished in the top 20, he still managed to close the gap on William Byron, who DNF'd earlier in the race. So Chase Elliott getting closer to that points lead, and so is Larson right behind him. And then we look at the bubble battle. As you can see, it's getting closer because you can see that Chris Buescher did not have a good race, and Alex Bowman extended his gap on the bubble. So you can see that battle's getting closer. But there's still a lot more races left in right before the playoffs. So I expect more people to possibly get wins. And that is all for the post-race report. Now we're going to go on to the interview. All right, guys. All right. Thank you for joining Jakob and Jayder. How's your day going?
Thank you.
Good,
I'm chilling.
Nice.
We're chilling.
Okay, so I had you guys here on the podcast before, but we just had a race that went on last week. It was the Chicago Street Race. Wasn't surprised to me that SVG dominated, and we finally got to see a cup race with no rain at all over there in Chicago, so I was happy about that. What did you all, starting with Jakob, what did you think about the race entirely?
It was kind of mid.
Wild.
I did not like how there was like no passing, but I expected that, and I expected SVG to win.
It was like Monaco.
I don't hate SVG, but I like that the 88's back, but I feel like it just takes the excitement out of wondering who's going to win when you have a guy that can gap the field by 15 seconds on every road course. So.
Yeah, SVG tries to be like Max Verstappen at these road courses. And I kind of said that in my monologue about the post-race, that Chicago Street Race is kind of like NASCAR's Monaco, like in F1, where it's just really difficult to pass, and you just got to put a really good lap time and hope you don't get involved in someone's pileup. So that's pretty much what was going on. Jayder, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on the Chicago Street Race, it was I was happy there was no long. I was happy we had a year. There was no rain, so we could see drivers fully go at it, and not having to back off and just not and be worried about wrecking in the rain. But one thing I liked about the race was that SVG, because SVG was struggling in the ovals, even though he was improving, he wasn't there yet, and he was 28th in points. And now he has 2 road course wins, which is a very good improvement. Is good for him. He's now in the playoffs. Race wise, it was all right. There was a wreck on lap 4 where Carson spun himself out, and then wrecked in front of Austin Dillon, and then the whole field just got collected in it.
Yeah, I must ask. I must ask a follow-up with all of this. With SVG winning his second race of the season, he could potentially win his third race at Sonoma. Do you think he's pretty much cheating the system, tying 3 wins with the most wins this season, and just being good at road courses and nowhere else? What do you guys think?
Well, what I think is that it is not cheating, because you look at other drivers that have won races only in super speedways that made it to the playoffs, even to the round of 8, and no one makes an eye. So I think SVG is doing great. Will he win Sonoma? Maybe, because Denny Hamlin is really good at Sonoma. So is Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Logano, AJ Allmendinger. But yeah, there's a lot of drivers who will give SVG a run for his money, because Sonoma is not a new track. All these veteran Cup drivers have raced in Sonoma and know the track. Kyle Busch isn't bad at Sonoma. He won Sonoma in 2015. Denny Hamlin almost won the race in 2016. So I think that SVG will get a run for his money in Sonoma.
You know, Jayder, you mentioned Kyle Busch, but I think you're missing another Kyle. Kyle Larson. He's won a couple of races
Kyle
over there.
Larson.
One there in 21 and one there in 23, and I bet Jacob has something to say about that.
Yeah, he's pretty consistent there. I think, in my opinion, Martin Truex was the best active driver until he retired. I think Sonoma will be a testament as to whether SVG is a good road course guy or if he's a good street course guy and or good at new road courses, because the 2 road courses he's managed to win at have been road courses or street courses that everyone else has limited to no experience on. So his skill and ability to perform at these tracks is, in my opinion, enhanced compared to Sonoma, where these guys have been racing it for years compared to him. So but I think Kyle Larson's definitely a favorite going in. He's got 2 wins within the last 4 or 5 years there, because I know he won last year. Yeah, I can't remember what else he won. I think he won.
I think it was in 2021.
That's what I was going to say. It wouldn't surprise me. He won a lot in 21. But, so I think he's a good guy to keep an eye on. I think Elliott with his momentum is also another good guy to keep your eye on. But
Yeah, a lot of favorites going into Sonoma. You never know. Suarez got his first win over there in 2022, and he just got booted out of this ride, which we'll talk about that later in this podcast, but he got booted out of this ride, and I think he's going to be motivated to try to get a win here. But back to the Chicago race, guys. Do you think with it not raining at the Chicago street race would save the street race for possibly having another race in the future? What do you think, Jayder?
Absolutely, because as like Chicago is not really known for NASCAR. It's more for basketball. It's more of a Chicago, for basketball. NASCAR is new to Chicago. There's a lot of people from Chicago that have never seen NASCAR. And I don't think they're going to go out of their way to watch a race pouring in the rain. So I think that this year that there was no rain, it gave the drivers, it gave the fans excited. They're not, there's finally there's sun, everything's dry. They can watch the race without having to get under the bleachers or under the stands. So I think there is a possibility that Chicago might come back next year.
Yeah. Have something to comment about what Chicago's being known for. Back in the 90s, they were known for basketball, but their sports totally suck now. But, all right, Jacob, what do you think? Do you think they'll return to the street course?
Do I think they will? Probably. Do I want them to? Not really. I don't think the racing there has been satisfactory for me personally. I think there's better road courses that have given us better races. I also, one gripe I really have with the course is the where the restart zone is, because I think it benefits the leader to an extreme, and it allows them to completely cut off second place before they even go to the green, which I don't really think is fair. Obviously, it produces more chaos and usually results in more cars getting wrecked, but I'm more of a fan of them starting on a straightaway and allowing to get some power down before they get to the corner, because I just think it produces better racing right off the get-go. But I don't know. I don't really find that, like, it's a race that I could go without personally. I don't really have a preference. It's not my favorite racetrack. I was happy to see that it actually went green and didn't get rained out. But yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what other tracks they try to add to. But
Jayder, would you like to respond to that?
Chicago. So, Chicago is an interesting track. Does it provide good racing? In 2022, 2023, we had a good battle with Justin Haley and SVG with, like, I want to say 10 laps to go. We also had a great battle. Well, it wasn't a great battle. It's more like a mini incident that happened where Austin Dillon was almost taking the lead, but crashed himself into the wall. In my opinion, the Charlotte Roval provides better racing than Chicago.
Oh, yeah. And I noticed about these new road courses, too, it's a lot more like wild card races. Sometimes with how new they are to some of these drivers and how chaotic they can be. So, okay, so with more on about Chicago, there was a lot of controversy going on with some of these battles in the Chicago race, as you had Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace trying to battle for to advance in the in-season challenge for $1 million. You can see them like going back and forth. I think it was just racing, them trading paint. And obviously Alex Bowman got the better end of it than what Bubba Wallace did. Bubba Wallace fell to the back. Jayder, I'm going to start off with you. What did you think about that battle, and do you think they'll have more of a rivalry going forward?
Of Logano and Chastain?
No, Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace.
Oh, my fault. Alex Bowman and Bubba. So Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace. Have they? I don't think so. I think it's more of hyping up the fans, and just to make fake drama. Because Bubba Wallace and what's his name, Alex Bowman, they both agreed that it was a racing incident. It was not on purpose, that they wrecked someone else.
Yeah. I think a lot of people forget, too, that back in 2021, they had an incident at the Roval where they had Alex Bowman was suffering from his exhaustion and trying to make it to the next round of playoffs, finished third, and then you have Bubba Wallace, who Alex Bowman made contact with in the beginning of that race, pour water on him. I was wondering if there was a little bit of history with that, but it seemed like them two drivers, besides with other drivers, got pretty much along after their incident, which I found really interesting.
I personally think it was a racing incident.
Yeah, just racing. What do you think about it, Saucy?
I think it's good racing. One of them wanted to give up the position, and eventually, at some point, something had to give way. And Bubba's bumper was what gave way, and he got put in the wall.
Yeah. Insane racing there. Okay, and then, of course, there was another rivalry with Joey Logano and Ross Chastain. As it looked like, I think it was like the last restart, it looked like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got into Joey Logano, and then that spun Ross Chastain. And then Chastain got into Logano. And Chastain, of course, wasn't happy. And he took out Logano and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., which I thought was a pretty cool move. Kind of like what Austin Dillon did last year, which I thought was hilarious. And, of course, you saw after the race, you saw Joey Logano really upset with Ross Chastain. Of course, you got Logano taking the rage bait, really aggravated at the Watermelon Man, and, you know, Ross Chastain just sitting there like a chill guy. Just wanted to let it go. But What do you think of the entire situation, Saucy?
I thought it was really funny because he got mad at Ross because he thought Ross intentionally dumped him when he was pushed into by like his own teammate from Cindric. And earlier on in the race, Logano did the same thing to him, and he expected Ross to understand that. But he didn't understand that the same exact thing happened. So it's just one of those weird incidents with tight racing, and especially at road courses where people overdrive the braking zone and run into each other. Something that I would always expect at a track like that. There's usually at least two or three drivers that have disagreements as far as bumping and rubbing goes. Honestly, I feel like even more than short track racing nowadays because of the nature of the braking zones and whatnot.
Yeah, Jayder, your thoughts about the drama there?
So the drama with Chastain and Logano,
Yes.
from what I saw in the replay, I don't think Chastain did anything on purpose. More of a racing incident.
Huh.
And when not Logano, Chastain.
Okay.
I don't know which clip it was from, but I saw a clip where Logano from a restart was behind Chastain, and there was a wreck, and a wreck happened where Chastain, I believe, accidentally hit Logano's front bumper, and also too, it's not the first time that there's been an incident with Chastain and other drivers. Do I think there'll be more retaliation in the future? Knowing Logano, probably at Sonoma, we can see something happen under caution.
Yeah. I mean, I see that kind of hypocritical history of Logano. It's like nobody can touch Logano, but he can touch anybody he wants to. That did sound kind of sus, but it's the truth. And that's why I got my Kenseth shirt on, just to troll the Logano fans here.
I disagree. I think Logano's always right.
Okay, bro. Okay, so, and then talking about more controversy, in the Xfinity Series race, the day before the Chicago race, you had SVG run Connor Zillage into the wall into turn 1 on the final restart. And that allowed SVG to get away from Connor Zillage, although he fought back to try to get to him, and let SVG win the race. And eventually, the next race, he'd sweep the weekend. But a lot of people weren't really happy about that, and I thought it was kind of iffy about that finish. With it being harder to pass with Chicago, the nature of Chicago and stuff. But of course, SVG ran Connor Zillage up. What did you think of it, Saucy?
About the pass specifically, or the whole race in general?
The pass specifically.
I think the Cup guys demonstrated that you could go 3 wide in those corners without incident multiple times. So I think shipping your teammate into the wall is definitely not a cool thing to do for an Xfinity win when your teammate is trying to race for a championship. But that's my hot take. I think if it was roles reversed and Zillage did that to get a win onto SVG, who's trying to battle for a championship, I think it would be made to be more of a big deal. But for some reason, for Xfinity, it's not. But I personally don't agree. I think he had the better car, and he could have been more patient with that pass. Zillage wasn't going anywhere, so I think to just run him over was a little unfair, in my opinion. But
yeah, watching it a couple more times, I kind of 100% agree with you on that, Jacob. Your response about that, Jayder, what do you think?
I have to agree with Saucy,
Right.
because here's the thing. Here's what I personally think. I don't think, this is a hot take too. I don't think, maybe for some people it's not. I don't think Cup Series drivers should run Xfinity, mainly because, like Saucy said, like there are drivers in the Xfinity Series who are legit contending for a championship, and you have some Cup drivers that wreck them, get tempers with them, like we saw at Chicago with SVG and Connor Zillage. Connor Zillage wasn't going anywhere. SVG just decided to, get into him, and I think that was pretty unfair because SVG isn't fighting for anything in the Xfinity series. He has nothing to prove there because they know he's above expectations in that series. I just feel like it was unfair to Connor Zilish because he could have really had a good chance to get some more playoff points and better position in the standings.
Yeah, crazy about all that situation. I have a big hot take about Cup drivers being in an Xfinity series, but we'll have to talk about that on another episode. But okay, next. So there was more controversy at the end of the Chicago Cup Series race as NASCAR delayed the throw to caution until after they crossed the line to end the race. As we saw Cody Ware in his Arby's 51 Ford go 120 miles an hour into the wall, losing his brakes. I thought they were going to throw the caution right away because I thought it looked like a nasty incident. But NASCAR was just really inconsistent with this call, I believe. What are your take on it, Jayder?
So what do I think about that? I
Yes.
think NASCAR fumbled the bag with that. Because the thing with NASCAR is they're not consistent with the cautions. Like, just look at the All-Star race in Texas when Blaney won it. Stenhouse hit the wall a little bit, kept the car straight, and they threw a caution for that. Look at Atlanta. We could have had the same finish we had in 2024. But they threw a caution for a wreck that did not affect anyone in the front. So I feel like this was a terrible look for NASCAR, knowing that they had a driver going 100 plus miles an hour to a tire barrier. He could have been seriously hurt.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I said about the situation. What do you thought about the situation, Saucy?
I think it's very strange just because they had, at least 6 corners to call, if not more.
They had a lot of corners left to go.
There was a significant amount of time that the camera just sat there, panned on him. And clearly, the races prior that I've seen at that track, when somebody goes that fast into the tire barrier, they do not come out of the tire barrier. And if they're worried about driver safety, that caution should have been thrown at the very minimum, at least 1 or 2 corners after that, because they know he's not coming out of that tire barrier. And why are you going to risk having the drivers come back around and have him just be a sitting duck if someone else loses their brakes? I don't think that's something that should be played around with and just let him sit there and just hope he magically becomes unstuck. I think that's just stupid. But I just think it takes away all the buildup of the race. I mean, you had the 45. I don't think he was going to catch him. I think he was too far back. But you had the 45 catching the rest of the field, and I think it just was a very anticlimactic end, and it wasn't a good look for the end of the race after finally actually having a full race there, in my opinion. I just don't like when races end that way in general, but
yeah, and also
just need consistency.
Exactly. Also, may I add to something? NASCAR with their cautions is that sometimes NASCAR they want to have entertaining racing, but we as fans, they need to understand too that we also care about driver safety. Looking at other motorsports, they take cautions seriously when a driver is in a crash. So when I see a driver going 120 miles an hour to a wall, keep in mind, a wall, that can kill a regular pedestrian in a normal car.
Mm-hmm.
So we should, even though NASCAR Cup Series cars are built super safely, you still don't know what could happen to a driver in that car. And yes, NASCAR, yes, you want more exciting racing. And let's say there are drivers almost at the finish line. That's fine. But if you see a driver seriously in a bad crash, even if it was by himself, you should take it seriously and throw a caution. Even if people think it was silly, the fact that there was a driver going 120 miles an hour to a wall is dangerous. You should have thrown the caution.
Yeah, the G-forces, you pretty much feel in the same way, I bet, if you were in a regular car as well. So it's just
Exactly.
an accident like that. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much all about the Chicago race. And now we move on to the in-season tournament. As we, once again, for the second week in a row, we had a lot more upsets. We had Ty Dillon advancing over Brad Keselowski, which I don't think it's really an upset because Keselowski is not that good at road courses. Then you had Eric Jones advance, John Nemechek beat Chase Elliott by 1 position in advance. And then you got Reddick. That's not really surprising there. But then you had Priest, Ty Gibbs, and Zane Smith. I just find this in-season tournament really interesting because you're seeing drivers that don't really have opportunities to get their names out there as much are having more spotlight put on them by competing in this in-season tournament. And I find it really interesting Ty Dillon's still in here. What do you guys think about these upsets going on in this bracket? Kind of reminds me of March Madness in a way.
Let me go first. Ty Dillon. Let's begin with Ty Dillon. Ty Dillon, is he the best Cup Series driver? Absolutely not. Oh, well, yeah. But Ty Dillon, even though he has never won a Cup Series race, he does know how to keep his equipment safe and not go DNF. Look at Daniel Hemrick in 2022. He did terrible in that 31 car, which is now the 10 car. He did terrible. He DNF'd. He didn't finish well. He had to start at the back of the Daytona 500. And look at Ty Dillon now. Ty Dillon is consistent. They're not looking for Ty to win races. They just want Ty Dillon to keep the car safe. And with the end season challenge, I feel like Ty Dillon is doing a wonderful job in that 10 car. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's keeping the car clean and out of trouble. This end season challenge is to show that other drivers are capable of competing against other better drivers. He beat Denny Hamlin, and he also did beat Brad Keselowski. Me personally, I think Ty Dillon might get to the final round. Will he win it? Probably not, but he will get to the final round, in my opinion.
Interesting. What do you think about all of it, Saucy?
I think it's a fun concept. I think it again shows why our current playoff system is a little bit broken. When you have guys that typically finish horribly and they end up making it into the later rounds. Is the top 5 that are in points right now. None of them are still in the in-season challenge, besides I believe Reddick. But I do think it's really cool that some of these different drivers for smaller teams have the chance to win a bunch of money for their team and get their name out there. But I don't have a problem with it. I think it's cool. I think it's different. Again, I think it builds some nice talking points and creates great moments like the Bubba v. Bowman incident. So I'm for it.
Yeah, I find it, like I said, really interesting as well because, of course, like I said, it's kind of like March Madness. You have some pretty good colleges lose to colleges you wouldn't expect. And you're kind of seeing that in NASCAR, too. And I see you want to add something there, Jayder?
Also, too, with the end season challenge, it's a very good idea. In my opinion, this is better than the current playoff format.
Ooh. Why is that?
I don't know. It's just fun, interesting. We don't have you winning, you're in. We have people actually driving, going finishing ahead of other people. They're doing great stuff.
It's like the end of Championship 4. Whoever's got the best position wins the whole thing.
Yes.
Which is kind of crazy. Okay, so we're done talking about that. Now we're going to talk about the Sonoma predictions. Sonoma, NASCAR's consistently been going there over the years, and I'd say one of the best Sonoma racers, Martin Truex Jr., is now retired now, so I definitely think there's going to be more of more competitive racing between all the other drivers. Of course, you got Shane Van Gisbergen's got great momentum. Kyle Larson, who's won there a couple times before. That's my prediction. I think Kyle Larson's going to win this. I think he's going to surprise everybody by getting in a battle with Shane Van Gisbergen, kind of like Chicago last year. But this time he's going to be on the winning end. What's your predictions for Chicago? And I'm starting off with you, Saucy. Who do you think's going to win Sonoma?
Ty Gibbs.
Actually, that's not a bad choice. He's got momentum.
Only because I've been thinking he's going to win for a while, and he's gotten really close. And I think
he did finish second.
At least Chicago. This year, I think he's been the second best on road courses this year. If you look at the stats, as far as finishes go, he's been very consistent at all of the courses. He's been up there competing and battling for the wins. Just has had some strategy not go his way. But I think if they can find their groove like the 19 team did, I think that they could pull it off.
Who do you think's going to win, Jayder?
I think it might be Chase Briscoe. Not Chase Briscoe, my fault. Not Chase Briscoe, but I could see Tyler Reddick, or we could maybe see a Tyler Reddick and I want to say Chase Elliott.
What you mean? Those are
Tyler-
not bad picks. And who you mentioned before that, Chase Briscoe. I mean, although they didn't go with him, I don't think he's a bad pick either because he's running the same car that Truex did.
Yeah, that is true. He is running that number 19, and that number 19 is really good on road courses. So just because he's riding the JGR 19, I think he will have a good chance too in that car. They'll probably give him the same setup as Martin Truex.
Yeah. What do you think, Saucy? I think you want to add in on that.
Well, I was going to say Tyler Reddick's a really good pick, too. I forgot about Reddick. He had a lot of fire under him, coming with that late rally at Chicago. And I mean, he's a really good road course driver, and I think he's itching for a win. So I could see him winning as well. I was really sad that the orange Jordan car didn't go in the victory lane. I think that was my favorite Jordan car to date.
Agreed. The crazy thing about Tyler Reddick, too, I think this season's kind of folding out kind of like last year. The first half of the year, he just had a hard time trying to win, and he'd come really, really close until later on. And then he got hot. And then he made it to the championship 4 later on. Maybe the same thing will happen for him this year. Okay. So This is the final topic I'd like to talk about. This is more of like off-track stuff. But big news that hit NASCAR just a few days ago. Daniel Suarez will not be returning to Trackhouse next year. Daniel Suarez only has like a couple of wins on his resume, and this year he's been pretty mediocre with his stats and stuff. He has a little bit of speed, but not enough to get his results, and it showed at most of the tracks this year. My question is for you guys, where do you think Daniel Suarez will land next year? Or do you think he's out of cup totally, or what do you think's going to happen to him overall? We'll start off with Saucy.
I've heard rumors that he's going to the number 9 and replacing Wash Chase Elliott.
I definitely know that's not going to happen. But seriously, what do you think?
I think this is my long shot, and it's not really a long shot, but honestly, I just think that him and Zilich will switch positions. I think there's definitely a bit of a alliance cooking in the background between Junior Motorsports and Trackhouse. And I think with Pitbull stepping away, there's a void there as far as like having another big person a part of the team besides Justin Marks. So I could see, and if you look at too, like Junior's invested in Connor Zilich just as much as Trackhouse is his. I mean, they're lending, Trackhouse is lending Zilich to them right now, but I think he's gonna go probably somewhere in the Xfinity Series, or he may just step away like Corey LaJoie and do something else. Who knows?
Part-time, maybe?
Perhaps. Or he could step down and be a part-timer like Eric Almirola. I mean, that worked out really well for him. He hasn't been doing as well as recently, but for a while there, every race he was running, he was doing extremely well.
And
Speaking of which, Almirola won Sonoma last year, I believe, in the Xfinity Series. So I don't know if he's running it again this year, but I think
he's won
he would be another
some this year.
solid.
I think Almirola did. I have to look back on that. I think he did win a couple races this year. Okay. So, Jayder, what do you think about Daniel Suarez, him being released?
So with Daniel Suarez, I really do feel bad for the guy because Trackhouse was only reason why Trackhouse even really happened was because of Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez is what made Trackhouse Trackhouse. He used to be the main center of Trackhouse racing, but ever since Ross Chastain got hired and outperformed Daniel Suarez, he became more of the guy for Trackhouse than Daniel Suarez. So when they witnessed SVG win more races than Daniel Suarez, they were like, "Hey, Daniel, got to step it up." They even changed his crew chief. But as soon as people left Trackhouse, I personally think it was over for Daniel Suarez. So my prediction is what Saucy just said. I think Daniel Suarez might go to the Xfinity Series and just do a trade with Zilich. But also too, Daniel Suarez did say that he had nothing to prove in the Xfinity Series, and it's kind of true because Daniel Suarez has won in the Xfinity Series, has a Xfinity Series title.
Yeah, won in
I
2016.
think,
And then he just won in Mexico a couple weeks ago.
Exactly. I think the best thing for Daniel Suarez is to pull a John Hunter Nemechek. Nemechek never won front row equipment. He got hired by Kyle Busch and started winning races. In the Truck Series, he got promoted to Xfinity Series, started winning there as well. And he's not doing the best at the Cup Series level, but I think Daniel Suarez could go to Junior Motorsport. That's my option for Daniel right now, Junior Motorsports. He can win another title.
Yeah. So here's my take about the Daniel Suarez thing. I think because, we'll have to do an episode on this about the lawsuit going on between Legacy Motor Club and was formerly Rick Ware Racing. I can't remember the new name. They change names all the time with these teams. But they're having like an argument going on about who's going to get their charter, and whether it be Legacy Motor Club or Rick Ware Racing. I think Daniel Suarez is either going to land on one of those teams. I don't think he's going to be going back to the Xfinity Series. I think he's going to find like a Cup ride, but it's going to be a lower tier Cup ride. But Rick Ware, if you notice, their speed has been picking up a little bit. Yeah, they've been picking up a little bit. As you can tell, like before Justin Haley left, he had some speed in that Rick Ware car. So I could see potentially Daniel Suarez going there. So that's what I think about that.
I think Daniel is going to create DSI, Daniel Suarez Incorporated, and drive his own Cup team.
Imagine. Okay. That's an interesting take, but okay. So that's the end of this podcast. There's our takes about Chicago and Sonoma coming up. It's a pleasure having both of you two for this new type of podcast that I'm doing this week.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here.
So, all right. See you guys later.
All right. See you.